Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks to everyone that's come in from their sunny gardens, and I'm jealous of those that haven't had to. This is an audience without Maisie Adam, for obvious reasons. We are kind of still here in spirit, if not in body. It was quite a different event that we had with you last year at the festival, Maisie, when we did a sell-out smash hit show in a pub in Harrogate. Yeah, and times have changed a lot in the last few weeks, so we're doing it this way now, which is fine, and it's lovely to have you back.
Thank you for having me.
So just to go over the boring bits, everyone is on mute just so that we can hear you mainly, not me, but what you answer. And we'll have a nice chat, but the chat facility is there for anyone that wants to comment or ask questions or whatever. So we'll do, I've got a few questions for Maisie. It feels quite formal, but hopefully it won't be. And then we've got some time, hopefully at the end, to just see if anyone else has anything burning to ask. My dog has just come into the room and he's really keen on getting involved in this session. So if he kicks off, I apologise now. I might just mute myself and run out. But cool. We'll crack on. Normally I hand over to someone else at this point, but I'm handing over to me now. So we will get on with it. I think everyone on here will be familiar with Maisie, who is a rising star on the UK comedy circuit and originally is from Harrogate, which is hence the kind of roots with Women on Tap as well. And we've done a few things now, haven't we? Oh, nice. Lovely. There you go. Proof.
Yeah, proof.
So you only started on the circuit a few years ago, and you've just been smashing it basically since then, going from strength to strength in an industry where women are still seriously underrepresented, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. You've been on TV a lot recently, which is amazing, and you continue to just totally smash it and get amazing reviews all over the place that I keep seeing pop up. And yeah, as mentioned, last year's appearance at the Women on Tap Festival was awesome. It was really great to have you back, and it was a fab night, and I still keep looking at the photos going, oh, it was great. Loved it, absolutely loved it. So thanks for coming back and chatting with us over a beer on this sunny bank holiday Friday. I'm going to start with my first question then. As I mentioned, you've only been on the comedy circuit for a few years, 2016, and I believe that your first stand-up show was at the Ilkley Fringe.
Yeah.
Just give us a quick sort of whistle-stop tour of sort of then and what's happened. It's probably been a big whirlwind few years for you.
Yeah, it has. It's definitely been a bit mad. It's felt very, and it's felt quick as well. Because I get sort of asked that a lot of oh, hasn't it been quick? And it doesn't feel any less quick for me. And sometimes I do get that little bit of like, oh my God, can we slow down for a minute? Because I keep having these moments where I realise like the smaller room in Harrogate Theatre, for example. I was thinking about that for some reason the other day, and a couple of weeks after that first gig in Ilkley, I went to go and see Ed Gamble at Harrogate Theatre, and he was playing that smaller room. And then I thought, if I'd have said to myself then, you know, in a couple of years, you'll be going to Dubai with Ed, and you and him will be opening for Josh Widdicombe at the Opera House in 2 years, that's proper mad. And so there's every now and then there's just little moments that sort of make me pinch myself a bit, because there's been things that I would sort of maybe when I was starting out expected would happen maybe in five or so years, and they've happened in less than that. So I'm just as shocked as anybody else, to be honest. Especially if you saw some of the new material I write, it's not worthy of it. But I guess since that first gig, it was mainly just a confident thing. When I chat to like new open mics who sometimes ask for like advice or what the right route is into it, it's to just gig as much as possible, because then that gives you the confidence to do things like, in my case, apply for So You Think You're Funny, which was this huge competition run by the Gilded Balloon. And somebody said at one of the first few gigs I was doing, and maybe even the Ilkley one, said, you should enter a competition for new acts. And I googled new competitions, and So You Think You're Funny was the top one. And if you read the list of winners and nominees on that, it was honestly, Rach, like my heroes, or like my DVD collection of stand-up comedy growing up. It was just all the names that inspired me. So I applied for that, and I'd say winning that was maybe the sort of catalyst for everything after that, because off the back of that I got signed and got a lot more of attention for more gigs, and through that I got, you know, more opportunities. So it's sort of been a bit of a snowball effect, but I'd say that was kind of the turning point of feeling confident enough to apply for I didn't apply to it thinking I'd win. I applied to gauge where I was at that, because I'd been going 6 months. I thought, well, if I could get to a semi-final or get through a heat or something like that, then I know where I stand.
Yeah.
But yeah,
figuring out what level you were at, like on the
At the open mic circuit, I was gigging with some people who, like me, were trying it for the first time, or, you know, it was their third or fourth gig, and then there were some people who'd been doing it 10 years but only sporadically. And so you're all sort of at different levels of experience, but not necessarily different levels of quality. So it was more just to gauge where I was at with all of that, really. But I'm glad I did.
So do you think that that competition was, my next question was about sort of what was the tipping point for you, where you kind of went, yeah, this is for me, like this is my destiny, or whatever kind of.
Yeah, I think definitely
moment.
It would be that moment for sure. I mean, I know it sounds really, really cliched to say it, but after that Ilkley gig, I did come off stage like literally buzzing. I was just grinning from ear to ear. I was always into performing. I was at the Harrogate Youth Theatre, and I did a drama degree. I loved performing, and you know, you get a buzz from that, but the buzz from stand-up, it was like something completely different. So I knew I definitely wanted to carry it on. I just didn't know if I was necessarily that good, because half the audience at that first gig were like my mates and my family. They were just being particularly supportive. So then I think it was after So You Think You're Funny, which of course is voted for by industry judges. It was like David O'Doherty and the woman who runs Melbourne International Comedy Festival and all of that. I thought, well, if those people think I'm good, then, and there was a review out the next day of all of the whole competition, and it reviewed each of our performances. And this bloke, he didn't pull, you know, he writes for Chortle and he doesn't hold back. And he was slating some of the performances, and then I had a nice, he reviewed me really nicely actually, and then said the only thing I didn't like her was her shirt. And that was I guess sort of like the first of a few times where you think, like, why is that relevant? If you like my comedy, you like my comedy. But that's gone on and happened, you know, multiple more times since then, where you're just going, okay, fine.
Well, you just think if that's the only thing they have to complain about, then you're doing something right, aren't you?
Exactly. Yeah, that competition, the prize for winning it was a cash prize of £2,500, which I spent on PR for my next Edinburgh show, which was my first one. And you also won an opportunity to go to Montreal Comedy Festival, which is the biggest comedy festival in the world. And I was being flown out there and was staying in a hotel with like proper A-list massive celebrities, you know, just passing in the corridor, and we all had blooming artist passes. So I was just surrounded by like really cool massive celebrities, and just sort of getting to see them and then be nervous at such a huge opportunity kind of like put it all into perspective. And I just liked the company a lot better. As I say, I used to do acting, and actors I can find quite irritating. It's very egotistical, and they all want to have the main part, and they all want to be centre stage. Whereas comedians don't have to fight for that. They are in centre stage. They are there on their own, and they're more in control. They know that what they're going to say is funny. And they're just, I find them to be a little bit less egotistical. That's not all of them. Believe me, there are some egos out But yeah, it was definitely a moment where I realised like these were the kind of people I wanted to hang out with. These were the kind of people I wanted to be, doing the things that I wanted to do. So yeah, and so then a compliment from them when they said, "Oh, you're good." That means so much more, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my next question was around the so you think you're funny, and I think you've sort of touched on it already a few times in terms of kind of being inspired by people and kind of you know, that kind of being the spark that sort of pushed you on to sort of take an ambitious step where you might not have otherwise. So you were the 4th woman to have ever won that award.
Yeah.
Which is amazing, and I think that, like, what do such awards mean to you, but what do you think, how important do you think they are maybe for other people, that, you know, to inspire them into that kind of career path as well?
I think they're hugely important, and I think my final, the So You Think You're Funny final, was its 30th year. So, and I remember reading that fact that I was the 4th woman in its 30 years to have won, and just being really shocked, because a lot of my inspirations were women, and I thought, well, why haven't they won this before me? And then you look through the list of like winners and competitors, and they were maybe in it, you know, Joe Brand or whatever, they were in the final but didn't win it, and they were often the only woman in those finals. If you can find it on the internet of like all of the finals of years gone by, and often it's one woman, and that's a real shame. I have to say my final was 5 women and 4 blokes, and that was the main thing people kept speaking about with the final, was that it was female heavy. And the same goes for the next year when I did my first show, Vague. The Edinburgh Comedy Award nominees were announced for Best Newcomer, and it was 6 nominees, 5 of us were women, and again that was commented about. So I think it's good that it's happening. It's good that it's clearly inspiring more people to get into it, and therefore opening doors for more people to go to those elevated levels of awards and whatnot. I suppose the next step that I'd really like is when that doesn't become a factor of whether they're a woman, of whether they're it's woman heavy or whatever like that. I find that kind of probably the most frustrating aspect.
Yeah.
When your gender comes into a reason of why you're doing well. My pet hate on the circuit is being introduced as female comedian Maisie Adam. It honestly makes me want to rip my hair out, because none of my mates are ever introduced as male comedian or anything like that. And I'm aware that that's not a thing with just comedy. You know, that it'll happen the same way people always assume a doctor is a man and a nurse is a woman, or a plumber is going to be a man. But it's frustrating. But I think those awards, because they're big moments, they're specific moments, and they're specific titles, for that to be held by more women in proportion to men, I think is going to encourage more people to get into it, and more people to apply for the competitions and stuff. So I do think it plays a huge role, and especially with So You Think You're Funny being run by the Gilded Balloon, which is a female-fronted company as well. That's a massive part of it.
Yeah. So, well, I was looking back at, because I did a Q&A with you back in 2017, I think, and I was looking back at some of the questions that I'd asked you then, and there was quite a bit on the subject of women in comedy then, and I picked up the stats from back then. So this was 2017, and it was on the Chortle site that they had listed 269 female comedians, and they had 1,279 male comedians. So, you know, we're chatting about it already, but is it changing, do you think? Is it changing now? Is it changing fast enough? Like, no, are there people out there?
Nowhere near as fast as it was. And so often the changes are not across the circuit. So there's organisations like Funny Women, which puts on female-fronted nights, just female nights. But then, of course, with that, it means that only people who are actively interested in promoting women and wanting to see funny women go, rather than just if, say, a big comedy club just put more women on and didn't make it a thing about being, it's a funny women night, it's just a comedy night, and you might see, you might see a bloke, you might see a woman, you might see someone white, you might see someone black, you might see someone able-bodied or disabled. It shouldn't be billed as one thing, I don't think. So it's changing, but it's kind of like asking if is the war on climate change changing? Like, yeah, but nowhere near blooming fast enough. I think people are becoming aware of it and aware that it's a problem, but nowhere near fast enough. I mean, I moved to Brighton in December 2017, so just after that conversation will have been. And there's a big comedy club here, Comedia, and it does comedy Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Huge, 400 people come in every night. And I went through the listings, and they were about 6 months in advance, and it was all white blokes all the way through, and most of them my dad's age, and most of them looked like my dad. And it was really, and you think, well, what's going to be spoken about there that's not already been spoken about after the first blow? There going to be any variety in experiences or anecdotes or styles there? Probably not. And also, like, just if you're a massive comedy fan and you want to go again the next week, you're going to say basically the same comedians. There were some comics who were there every 3-4 weeks, and you think, that's got to change. And that's just because people who are booking it have been booking it for 20 odd years and have their favourites, and those favourites are the ones who were top of the game 20 odd years ago. But yeah, between 20 odd years ago and now, there's a lot more variety, there's a lot more different styles, there's a lot more different kinds of comedy. There's different sort of genres of it now, and people are sort of, they're quite slow to take a risk, I think, on changing what they already know, and that's in Brighton, which is probably, it's about as liberal as it gets down here, and sort of, you've got audiences actively seeking out a varied, equal lineup, and it's not happening even down here. So I'd still say, obviously at the moment I've got no gigs in the diary, but most of the gigs that I usually have booked in, I'd say out of every 10 I do, maybe like 7, I'm the only woman on the lineup.
Yeah.
And that's sort of as in, club circuit gigs.
Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously from the theatre point of view, we've had like situations where we're programming our comedy festival and we're trying really hard to make sure it's balanced, and you constantly get promoters going, oh, I haven't got any women that are available, or you just get told they're not touring, or they won't come out of London, or all of this. Like, we've had so many. And my next question really is around, what do you think the barriers are to women? I remember sitting down with a promoter and being told that they won't be out late at night. That's why you don't get women comedians, because they don't want to be travelling, across London like at 1 a.m. after a stand-up gig on their own and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, and I'm wary of speaking for everybody on stuff like feeling safe and whatnot. But that's certainly never been a reason for me. Of I'm often catching the last train back out of London to come back to Brighton. There's a few gigs that sort of will share amongst each other of there's if you've got to walk through a park to get there or something like that, we'll say, I'll make sure you get a taxi for that. And there's some clubs that even say, we'll pick you up from the station and drive you back and whatnot. But to say that that's a reason as to why women aren't available to be programmed on is BS, to be honest. It's really not true. And I think, as somebody who started out up north and not in London, I went to go and watch comedy in Harrogate and in Ilkley, at the Basement in York, and I'd say I was watching it as in, like, regularly driving, sometimes just on my own because I just wanted to watch it, and so often there was maybe perhaps one woman on the lineup, if ever at all. And then I started gigging, and it was at Ilkley that I went and watched I mean, I can't remember who was on, so I'm not going to badmouth anybody, but I watched the gig and thought I can do better than some of those people on there. And I went up to the promoter and said at the end, look, if you'd like to give me 10 minutes, I'm a new comedian, but I'm good. And he gave me 10 minutes. But he was, and then that 10 minutes was the one that then like made me like get into it properly. That was him that said, oh, can you show me 10 minutes clip? And I sent him the hour that I'd done at Ilkley in the big room about a week before. But out of all of the other promoters, you know, I messaged every promoter going on, Harrogate included, and never even heard back from people. And that's a woman who's based up north, you know, and wouldn't even have to travel. There's no risk of me being late for the gig. There's no risk of anything like that. But it's the same here in Brighton. I would message the people at Comedia when I moved here going, I've won So You Think You're Funny. I'm the 4th woman in 30 years to win it. By that point, I'd even done a couple of TV things. I've been on ITV2. I've performed support for these people. And I regularly gig in London at these well-renowned clubs. And still, I've only been able to be booked at the local club here in Brighton for the last like 9 months, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. It was only after I got nominated at Edinburgh that I was even allowed a 10-minute open, which is unpaid.
You know, I love the fact that you just went up to someone and went, I'm a new comedian, but I'm good, give me 10 minutes. Like that confidence is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I get told this a lot, that I was kind of quite ambitious, which again is, I think, a term that's often used seemingly only for women. But I think I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but I think when you know you're good at something and when you know you can do a better job, and it's frustrating because if you know that if you go the usual way about it, you're just it's not gonna get any further. I mean, I wasn't rude about it. I said, oh, you know, that was a great show. I'm also a new comedian. I'm local, and gave all these reasons to why it would just be easy practically to have me. And then said, oh, and I'm good as well. You know, I don't want to say that I was insinuating that the others were bad, even though they weren't great. Yeah, it was. I think I just I knew I wanted that comedy was what I wanted to do, so I sort of took the ball and ran with it, really. Again, after winning So You Think You're Funny, most people were like, so are you going to take 2 years, 3 years to write a show and go up to Edinburgh with it? I thought, you know, no, I'm 23. I want to do it now and go up there whilst there's still a chortle article online about me that's from within the last year. You don't want to be starting a show and putting on your poster that, you know, I won this competition 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
It's useless. So yeah.
It's awesome. Right, so tell us about your favourite comedians then.
Right.
Dead or alive, past or present.
I think
who inspires you?
I can answer that question without saying obviously Victoria Wood. And again, for the same reason that when they've been shown a lot of repeats of her stuff actually on BBC during this lockdown, and when you watch them, they're from like the 80s, and she, first of all, she doesn't have a mic. She does so much of it just micless. And I'd say in my 3 years of gigging, I've maybe had to turn up and do a gig without a mic like once or twice, and it's petrifying. You just suddenly forget what to do with your hands, and you're doing all of this stuff whilst gigging. It's horrendous. And she's so calm. But my favourite bit when you watch those shows of her, like an audience for Victoria Wood from the 80s, is when it pans to the audience, and that audience is pretty much 50-50 male and female, and she's speaking about a very female experience. You know, I watched a great routine on her about childbirth the other day, and there's blokes absolutely wetting themselves, and that's what sort of made it quite inspiring to me, was that she made everything so accessible. In a similar way, I used to watch Lee Evans growing up, who used to talk about, you know, being a dad of 2 and having a wife on the holiday and stuff. And although I was at that point maybe like a 13-year-old girl, I could still somehow relate to his, because of the physicality, and he showed, he didn't tell. I loved watching him. Rick Mayall is probably one of my heroes as well, because he's just so stupid. He's so stupid. Yet incredibly clever as well. I love any comedian who shows, you know, the really expressive ones. One of my favourite ones on the circuit at the moment, he's doing a lot of TV as well, which I'm really pleased about, is Tom Allen. I think he's just, he's hilariously funny, and he knows exactly what he's doing with that campness of it. He's sort of, he's camp without sort of, it being an overly trait of his. And what I mean by that is he's not sort of like Julian Clary, and that it becomes almost sort of a drag act at times, or anything like that. It's a sort of innuendo. I was really surprised he doesn't do like the Bake Off show all the time, because he's just innuendo central. But I think he's incredibly clever and incredibly funny. And I was lucky enough to record, this hasn't gone out yet, but I've already recorded the Christmas episode of 8 out of 10 Cats. We recorded it in January, and Tom's in that, and he was on the desk across from me on the other side of Jimmy. And at one point I was just watching him talk, because he's just so funny in that moment, and he can just pick up on little things and just make something that was probably quite a mundane comment someone made, and he could turn it into an absolute gold gem that'll be brilliant on TV. So yeah, Tom Allen's probably my favourite on the circuit at the moment.
Current one. Excellent. Well, I don't want to bring things down too far, but let's talk about the current situation. We can't really get away from it, given that we're in the middle of a virtual festival against all the odds. Live performance of all kinds, and obviously I work at the theatre in Harrogate, and I'm also caught up in this kind of difficult situation, just sort of live performance of all kinds in crisis really, and not really knowing what the next few months or the further afield kind of future looks like at the minute. How's it affected you, others around you? What's the chat in the industry? What does the future of kind of live comedy look like? And can anything positive come out of it as well? Because that's something you've got to kind of try and hang on to.
For sure. I think, well, firstly, I'd say that I think the huge turning point, certainly within my industry, of how we've been chatting about it, was Edinburgh being cancelled.
Yeah.
Because I was actually in Australia at the beginning of March. I've been out in Adelaide for a month, and I was due to be doing Melbourne as well for the next month. And then we had to fly home after Adelaide, because they thought Melbourne would be cancelled. And then literally when we were on the way to the airport, Melbourne got cancelled. And we thought, well, if these two have been cancelled, will Edinburgh be cancelled? And we were still mid-March by this point. And then like big events. So Glastonbury was pulled. The Olympics was pulled. I think the Olympics was the one where I was like, surely if an event that people train for 4 years is being pulled, then surely Edinburgh is going to get cancelled as well. But that was a scary time, because we had Edinburgh still in the diary, but all the gigs between, say, April and August, which is essentially just all the gigs that we used to preview a show, they'd all been pulled. So all of the preview festivals, nothing was in the diary really, aside from the odd gig, but Edinburgh was still in there. So a lot of people were worried about going up to Edinburgh with a show they'd only shown to a live audience maybe 2 or 3 times. And when Edinburgh got cancelled, that was like, oh, okay, this is really probably in for the long haul now. And I think, you know, I'm under no illusions that I work in an industry that is a luxury. When people come to watch comedy, that's a luxury outing. It's not an essential thing or anything like that. And I think it's also something that relies on big crowds. It's the bigger the crowd, the better it is. The best gigs, if you ask any comic, the best gigs they like to do are these 400-seaters, like the Glee Clubs and Comedy Store and Comedia. And when we've been living in lockdown for 3 months, where you've got to even if you go to shops, you're 2 meters apart from each other. How are people going to feel when suddenly you're crammed on a seat next to each other, drinking out of a glass that gets washed once in a big industrial dishwasher and then jet washed with cheap beer again? So I don't know. I think even when the lockdown is lifted and people are allowed to go out again, I think it'll be a staggered thing until people are filling out clubs again, because it's just not number one on people's priorities, I think. I hope that it'll change is people will appreciate live comedy a lot more. I think a lot of the worry that comics had prior to this was that so much more with things like Netflix and Twitter and Instagram, you've got comedy at the click of a few things with your thumb, and you can access hilarious content so quickly without leaving your sofa. But at the end of the day, nothing does compare to being in a live comedy club and being with all of those people in that one moment, and anything could happen on that stage. Anything could go wrong, anything could be heckled, anything could something could happen in the audience that the comic picks up on. Each gig is different. Even if every comic comes to that club knowing what set they're going to do, something can happen that night that changes it. And that's what's exciting about live comedy, that you don't get at pre-recorded, polished Netflix shows. And so I think what I'd like to happen out of this is for the live comedy industry, and I guess just the live entertainment scene, music as well. People will go out and enjoy live entertainment and appreciate being in that scenario, because for me personally, I think it's incomparable. It's amazing being in live entertainment.
Absolutely, yeah. I think for us at the theatre, I know that it's kind of a bit of a 3-point thing, in that we're watching what we're allowed to do, then we're watching kind of what do we want to do as an organisation, what's the right thing to do, and then obviously there's the element of actually building that trust again, and reassuring people that it is safe to go back into that kind of environment. And obviously it's it's the same industry and same dilemma, really, just from different angles. It'll be interesting to see the next few weeks.
From a very self-centered comics perspective as well, we're all worried that the moment we are allowed back on stage, we're all going to be discussing the exact same thing. Yeah. We can go on stage and talk about, I went on holiday the other month. No, you didn't. You were in we're all going to have to talk about it. But similarly, you're aware that you're going to be talking about something that everybody else on the lineup is talking about, but if you don't, it's an elephant in the room. So yeah, it's just kind of that's what I've been keeping myself occupied with, is trying to sort of find what the different angle is that I might have to other people. You'll notice I've already done a lockdown haircut.
I love it.
Thank you. I feel like I always wanted to do it, and then there's always been something like, I've got that gig that, and if it goes wrong, I don't want to turn up to a gig with a wrong haircut, or I've got TV and I don't want to just suddenly have a different look. Whereas I thought, well, in lockdown, if it goes wrong, the only people that see it is my boyfriend and you guys on the Women on Tap Zoom. So I'm quite pleased with it though. I've had a lot of banter from my brother. He said, I know you've lost a lot of work, so did you have to pay for your haircut in instalments?
That's what brothers are for, isn't it?
But it is nice. The first morning I woke up and I sort of went to go through my hair and it was all gone. It's a lot less trouble. So yeah, I'm all right in lockdown. I'm quite happy here, but I am missing the live circuit, and I'm missing being out every evening. It sort of feels weird to think that every evening I used to be on trains, tubes, buses, going all over this way, that way, Surrey one night, London the next, Scotland the next, all over. And now I've spent 3 months effectively just in the flat. So it is weird. I feel like I'm going to be quite claustrophobic when I do go out. I'm going to freak out if somebody sits next to me on the tube.
It's going to be very odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the next point then is, it kind of leads nicely on, virtual comedy and stand-up. what's that like in reality? Is it just really weird? And obviously we've seen the new format of the Have I Got News for You. I was looking at the next up, the streaming subscription, which is described as like an Edinburgh Fringe in your pocket, and all of these kind of things now that are popping up as different ways of delivering that comedy. What's it like in real life?
It's hard. It's like navigating something completely in the dark. It's really, really, because on the one hand, everybody expects you to be so comfortable with it. They think, oh, if you're comfortable enough to do stand-up and stand on stage and assume that everyone thinks you're funny, you're brave enough to do it on webcam. You go, no, the two are completely different. Like, I've had a few requests of like, surely you could just do stand-up in your lounge. And you think, no. Like the biggest fear I have before I go out on stage is what if they don't laugh? But you think that's statistically going to be unlikely. What with there being 400 people out there, you're going to get some level of feedback. Whereas when you're just doing it to your little, phone on a camcorder tripod thing, it's horrendous. And that was the main thing with the Have I Got News for You. I watched the previous episodes. I don't know if you've seen the others, and I realised just how much of an audience is valued on a show like that, because the laughter keeps the rhythm and it rolls it over. So the main note I had when I was going into recording it was not about what jokes I'd written. It was just keep laughing. What people are saying, keep that laughter going, so it keeps the rhythm going and the awkwardness leaves. I think that's why, like, I kind of enjoyed it a bit more than I thought I was going to, because I was just remembering to laugh all the time, and Romesh is a great host, so he did a good job of it. But of the other ones I've watched, when people crack a joke and all it gets is from like Ian and Paul going, that honestly makes my toes go like that. It's horrible. Yeah, it was an interesting one, was that, and also just the whole feeling that that Ian Hislop and Paul Merton and Romesh Ranganathan can see inside your flat as well. That's weird. Yeah, it was a funny one. But I think it's like stuff like this, I think is really great to be doing Q&As where you can still get that feeling of joining in on a crowd thing, of contact with people who aren't in your immediate vicinity. And I've done other ones where we've played like sort of improv along with other comics on a setup like this. I'm doing one on Sunday night, which is kind of probably the nearest thing I think that's going to be to stand up. But there's one host, kind of like yourself, who'll chat with us, and then I just kind of go off for 10 minutes telling some interesting stories, and I can look at the chat here. So I think it's definitely something that if there's the right setup and it's not just asking somebody to tell normal stand-up into a camera, it can work. But even then, it's the ones that do work, it is amplifying how much we miss a crowd and a live audience and all of that. I think, yeah, the Have I Got News for You was really, it felt strange to do. Oh, and Ian Hislop kept calling me Amy, which was really awkward. Oh, yeah, it was really awkward, and everybody else on the Zoom chat like knew, so that I had to correct him. I was like, yeah, my name's Maisie. I've actually been on the show before, thanks. But apart from that, it was all good. Someone just put in the chat, even Stephen Colbert has to have his son or wife in the room. That's nice. Now I don't feel like such an idiot.
Yeah, these are strange times we're all navigating, aren't they? Yeah. So the prospect of sort of any career at the minute in the arts and comedy and that sort of live performance is particularly daunting. What advice would you have for anyone that's sort of considering now, getting into a career in comedy, in stand-up, in live performance? I guess it's bound to be like particularly a challenging thought at the moment.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if somebody's considering trying stand-up now, I would question their sanity. Yeah. Well, where do you plan on trying this new stuff out? And we've even been joking, a few of us saying, God, the first few gigs are probably going to be a bit rough. There's going to be stuff that we thought was hilarious in the confines of our own lockdown quarantine, you know, a private joke that you're sharing with whoever you're isolating with, and then you get out on stage and you realise, oh, maybe it was just funny in like just with you two. So I feel like if anybody's considering doing stand-up, just make sure it's definitely not just an urge to be outside and amongst other people.
Yeah. Good advice.
I can imagine that the open mic circuit is going to be even more packed than it normally is after this, with people just desperate to scream anything into the ether and just be heard by more than your mum and your cat. I do think that's probably going to happen, but I think I always encourage anybody to get into comedy or the arts anyway. I think it's something everybody should at least try once, I think. And I think the reason I've managed to have that quick ascent, I guess, is because I tried it. And I think if I'd have thought too much about trying it, or if somebody had said, well, what if they don't find, you know, nobody really gave me the consequence options. They just were like, all right, you know, give it a go. So I would just encourage that, really. God knows there's enough people who aren't good enough who are giving it a go. So you might as well give it a go and see if you are. But I think following this, people are going to want live comedy more and live entertainment. And I think hopefully there'll be more money put into those sorts of industries. Because I think something like this kind of shows how much they struggle to survive.
Yeah.
And how dependent they are on audiences.
Yeah, it's so much on a knife edge, isn't it? The industry, and now these times now show just how much, because it's sink or swim at the moment, and it's that fragile.
Hugely, and people have been saying about Edinburgh, you know, when it was cancelled. Well, good, because it's been too expensive for a long time, and I hope the big venues, I hope they sink and it goes back to being, you know, rooms above a pub. And you think, well, hang on, no, because a lot of these big companies. They're big companies, but at the end of the day, their whole income relies on one festival. And if that festival goes, they've gone. And they, for as much as the expenses are mad for something like Edinburgh, and those probably do need to be looked at and may even be sort of changed following something like this, knowing that acts are going to have less money. But by and large, they are what makes the festival, and they are what provides a lot of the positives to a festival as big as Edinburgh. And a lot of them are family-run businesses that have been going for, you know, 20, 30 years off 1 month. And as soon as that month goes, that's a whole chunk of hard work that is suddenly, as you say, on a knife edge. So I don't think there's any winners out of this in the entertainment industry. I don't think there's anybody struggling more than what we're all feeling. Entertainment in itself is something that is solely reliable on the audience, on the crowd, and you take that out of it, everyone's going to struggle. So not a particularly funny answer there, sorry.
No. Well, I'm coming near the end of my questions, but my next one was all about what is the best way that people can support live comedy, live performance and the arts right now, in your opinion? Like, what can people do? There are a lot of people genuinely really, really worried about losing this part of society and this, you know, this, I mean, I know earlier on you said that it is a luxury, and I suppose in many ways it is, but, you know, for anyone that kind of has ever worked in the arts or had the enjoyment of, you know, a great show, a great pantomime, a great stand-up night, it's absolutely considered essential to many people, and they want to support. What do you think, what would you say is the best way they can do that at the moment?
I'd say to treat it like any other business, in that support the independents first. So rather than looking at what big comedy nights you can go to, look at the individuals sort of situation. A lot of them have got sort of like a special on Next Up, where if you pay to watch their stuff, they get all of the money. If you see what gigs they're doing locally, go and see them at your local venue, rather than going into, say, something like the Comedy Store and buying a ticket where it's 20 quid and the act will get like 10% of that or something. Yeah. I guess like with anything, when all of this opens, you're not going to be going into your Pizza Expresses. Go to your, you know, your individual, your independent local ones. And just, I do think a lot of comics are being quite open with how difficult it is, and have posted links to ways that you can support, you know, crowdfunding and just giving. And there's that thing, coffee, where you can buy someone a coffee, and that sort of goes towards them. Look out for, in the run up to the next Edinburgh, when people are asking for, you know, funds, or asking you to watch a certain thing to traffic certain money in. I think as well, go to shows. Take a chance is what I'd actually say. Take a chance that you wouldn't normally take. If you're looking at the programmes and a big name's coming to town, and you've seen them on telly, great. But look at who else is coming. Look at the up and comers. Look at people who this gig isn't going to be. This gig might be make or break on whether or not they're able to continue onto the next gig. So support a local live comedy scene. Places like Ilkley, that one there, and the sitting room comedy that you guys have at Harrogate, where they have, you know, a sort of local acts and up and comers, as opposed to like a big tour venue that's done by a big company. And I'm aware that I've just said in my last answer that we're all finding it as hard as everybody else, but I think if we look for the little guys and sort of support those for a minute, you're always going to have, I'm very cautious of saying particular names there, but you're always going to have like a big name that's on telly anyway, 3 nights a week. They'll come back to do a show in Leeds or York or Harrogate or whatever, but look out to see who else is taking a punt on the arts, I guess. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Excellent, thank you. I've got one more question, and it's nothing to do with any of that now. I want to ask you, Maisie, what is your drink of choice usually? I know you've got a beer tonight. Is that just you being nice because we're a beer festival, or would you normally go for beer?
No, I always go for beer. I do. I always go for my boyfriend runs a cocktail bar, and he's from the south, so he's proper posh. He's always like, he's been having espresso martinis, doing cold brew coffee and all of this, and they're lovely, don't get me wrong, I never turn them down, but there's nothing better for me than a pint. That's what I'm missing the most in lockdown, is sitting in the beer garden with a pint. I'll never take that for granted again. I'll never take that for granted. You know, even when you go into a pub and it's not a particularly nice pub, like the floor's a bit sticky and you think, oh, not bad. No, now I'll just be like, I'm just out. I'll sit down.
Don't be in those sticky floored pubs right now.
Straight in there. My boyfriend's just messaged me from the other room saying snake, so I think you might have heard that about the cocktail. They're really nice, but I find
Oh, Maisie, thank you so much. We've got a little bit of time for a Q&A if you're up for that. And if anybody has any questions, I did have one emailed to me. So I'm not like claiming all the limelight, but it's back over to me. It was, let me just find this question. It was from Matt from the US. Is that you, Matthew Hayes, on the chat? I don't know. Someone, Matt from the US, has asked, it's actually 3 questions in one. Oh, it is. There we go.
For this international festival, Women on Tap.
Definitely, yes. We're global now.
We're reach now, yeah.
He wants me to ask you, what do you consider is success for a comedian, career-wise? He also wants me to ask whether you have any hosting aspirations, and if so, what sort of show and format do you like? And the final question, I'll remind you if you forget these, is when was the last time something happened that made you think this can't be real? Okay.
So the first one was, what do I think success?
Yeah.
Is? Oh, this is a tricky one, because I could be like, just as long as you're happy, that's success, and everyone's going to go and sick their beers up. I guess success in comedy means that you've found an audience. The main thing I've noticed, sort of, I would say in the last year and a bit, is that compared to when I started, when I'd say, oh, I'm going to be at this gig, I'm going to be at this gig on Friday, I'm going to be at this gig on Saturday, I would be there, and the audience would probably have already gone anyway, and then I'm there. Whereas I guess now I start to turn up to gigs and people are coming because they've seen me on the lineup. Or an example is like when Have I Got News For You tweeted, our lineup this week includes, and they said the names, and there's people replying going, oh, love Maisie Adam stuff, we'll defo be tuning in. That feels really nice. It's sort of recognition for your work, and you know that your particular style has resonated with somebody. Because you know, there's so many different, I guess people who like Jimmy Carr might not also be into Jen Brister, or people who are into Chubby Brown aren't going to also be into basic human rights. I don't know, I'm joking, that's terrible. What I mean is I think it's nice when you realise that you've got a sort of a crowd that like you for you, and that's sort of a nice little pat on the back, and you know I guess that would be success for me, because I know that my stuff's been resonating with people, and they go out of the way to tune in if I'm there. That feels really nice. The second one was
hosting aspirations.
Hosting up. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, hosting would be fantastic. I think when I think hosting in terms of comedy, I always think kind of like Stephen Colbert or Jimmy Kimmel or anything like the proper sort of Saturday Night Live kind of ones. And then they try those in the UK and they absolutely die on their arse. Do you remember that one that they trialled a few years back that had John Bishop as the first host, and then a week later it was Davina McCall? I've seen a few nods. I can't remember what it's called. I think it was called the Friday Night Late Show, something like that. And it was dire. So I'd love to do something that style, but if it was good. I think in terms of hosting, actual Saturday Night Live, they have like guest hosts, and I think their sketches are brilliant. Like often if I'm just bored, I'll watch SNL sketches on YouTube. So if I could pick like the actors that are going to be on that week and the sketches we do, SNL would be like the ultimate one for me. But yeah, I guess the alternative is something like Live at the Apollo, hosting that. But I think I'd want to be doing my set. I wouldn't want to be doing the whole like admin of welcome to the Apollo tonight. We've got great guests. I'm too egotistical. I'd want to be like I'm the great guest. Here I am. So yeah, I guess it would depend on the show. And what was the third one?
So the third one was, when was the last time something happened when you thought this can't be real?
Oh, I know this one for sure. This was just before I went to Australia. We filmed Hypothetical, which is a show on Dave hosted by Josh Widdicombe and James Acaster. And I didn't know who I was going to be on a team with. It's two teams of two people. And I didn't know who I was going to be on with. And then there was a knock at my dressing door, and I feel like I've built this up too big now. It sounds like I'm going to go, and it was Whitney Houston. No, it was Jonathan Ross. But in terms of like what I said earlier about how when I saw Ed Gamble, and then to think in a couple of years I was like out in Dubai with him. Every Friday night when I was in high school, when I was at St Aidan's, every Friday night my dad would go out to Oakland's Mount Club to have a beer, and my mum and me would sit in and watch Ugly Betty on Channel 4, and then we'd always watch Friday Night with Jonathan Ross straight after. And we really loved his like presenting style. I should also say it was pre his scandal at Radio 2, so he was still the nation's sweetheart at this point. And we just loved it, and we never missed it. We always watched Friday Night with Jonathan Ross on BBC One. And then a few years later, here he is knocking on my dressing room to be like, oh, what should we call our team name and all of this. And like he was really, really genuinely, really, really lovely, and took a proper interest in me. And a really nice guy. And we had to come up with a team name, and we wanted to sort of replicate those awful team names they come up with on The Apprentice, you know, like Ignite or Stealth or Fascinate, something like that. So we came up with one that was like that, but a bit silly, and we called our team name Lubricate, and it had to come round on big flashing lights. And we recorded it, and it was so much fun. And then we got the photos through from it to like plug it on social media. And it's just a photo of me, a big flashing light saying lubricate, and then Jonathan Ross. And I sent that to my mum. She lives in France now, but I sent it to my mum being like, can you imagine if 5 years ago you said when we were watching Ugly Betty and Friday Night with Jonathan Ross that I'd be recording TV with him under a team name of Lubricate. And it's moments like that where you like, I'm sort of like, oh bloody hell, wow, this is a bit mad, this. Yeah, that was the last one, I reckon.
Wow. Does that answer your questions, Matthew Hayes?
Oh, here we go. Oh, yes. Oh, he's 4,682 miles from Ilkley. I guess that does mean the US.
Yeah, quite far. Does anyone else have any questions for Maisie? Well, we've got her. Post them in the chat if you do. Don't know. Nothing's really popped up. Everyone's been clearly very engaged in the chat tonight. So
back legs off a donkey.
Just wait a few minutes in case someone pops up, because this is what happened earlier. It seemed like no one had any questions, and then everyone did.
Yeah, for sure. I'd like to point out, I've got even a Harrogate glass here. I should point out it wasn't stolen. This is from the Tap and Spire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's got to be worth something now. It'll be worth something now, that.
No. Is it? All right, okay. It's still there, isn't it?
It's the Tap on Tower Street now. Yeah.
Oh, so I've got like a limited edition one.
Yeah.
Oh, I say. The Tap on Tower Street. Is that because there's 2 Harrogate taps now? Because there's the station one?
I think they just refurbed it, tried to make it look modern.
We've got into a cool Royston Vasey style debate now. What's been your toughest gig? From Helen. I still get flashbacks from this one, and it's a question I get asked a lot, but it's definitely worth telling, because it's whatever you're imagining, Helen, this is going to be worse. This was when I was I'd been gigging 3 months, very, very new, and I'd hosted an evening of entertainment to raise funds for a charity at the Labour Rooms in Otley, and a woman who'd come to watch that said, "Oh, would you host my thing that I'm doing? It's a festival, it's outdoors." And straight away, it was just so stupid and naive. I was imagining like Leeds Festival, me on like the main stage, sort of pyramid stage of Glastonbury, that kind of vibe. I was like, yeah, I'll host your festival, no worries. And she said, okay, it's on this date and whatnot, and if you could be here for this time, and we'll be under the big tent. I said, right, brilliant. And it was just outside. They gave me the postcode, and I drew, and it said it was near Menwith Hill. So I drove, and it was a really, really windy day that day, and I was driving across the top of the Dales to Menwith Hill, and it said, you're approaching your destination. I was like, there's nothing here. And then I could just see a little gazebo just outside the entrance to Menwith Hill. I thought, I'll ask them where this festival is. And I pulled up outside this gazebo, and this woman said, oh, hello, I'll change her name, I'm Claire. Thanks so much for coming. And I was like, oh, right, it's here, is it? I'll just park up then. So I parked up and then came out, and I said, so what's the festival for again exactly? What do you do here? She said, well, it's more of a rally, really. We're campaigning against Menwith Hill being here. And then I realised, oh my God, I'm at a rally here. This is what's going on. Just a little gazebo with a little. They said stage, but it was like this big. And I just had to sort of host between the acts, really. And I didn't know any of who these acts were. One was a bloke who'd written a poem about Trident. And then I had to just sort of come on, and I'd written little jokes to do just between hosting. And I remember I just did a bit of jokes about playing the recorder at school to literally like 5 people all stood at the side of this road in the wind. And they were all just sort of looking at me like this, going, why isn't she saying anything political or anti-Menwith Hill? I was just doing material about playing the recorder in year 4. And then so right now we've got a musical act now. Bring on this woman. She was in a like full-on socialist beret and everything, and she sang with a guitar a song to the tune of Tidings of Comfort and Joy, but instead it was Tidings of Trident and Bombs, Trident and Bombs. And at that point, I honestly had a sort of mental implosion. I was just like, I don't know what to do here. This is absolutely horrific. And I thought, just think about your payment. And they promised to pay me £15. And so at the end, I was like, right, I've done it. And I went over to the woman who was running it. I said, can I have my, thanks so much for having me. Is it all right to get my money? She said, oh, we haven't made enough money on the cake stall to pay you. They'd been selling these buns with like bombs with a cross through them, like grenade bombs with a cross ice through them, and they hadn't sold any, obviously. But I think they were like 50p a go as well. So like, even if everybody had bought like 10, I still wouldn't have got paid. And so, well, what do we do then? She went, I'll give you a mug instead. And she gave me this ceramic mug. I've still got it somewhere. I'll try to get out. A ceramic mug that said Campaign Against Menwith Hill Association. And it had like a big diagram, like a big sort of logo that they'd done with the big golf balls with crosses through them. And I've kept the mug because every time I open the cupboard and see it now, I think whatever gig I'm nervous about, it's not going to be as bad as that gig. There's not going to be a woman singing Tidings of Trident and Bombs and all this. It was absolutely, I'm surprised I've not had to get therapy for it. It was awful, absolutely awful. Oh, and a minor detail, I was flying to America the next day, so I was quite pro it, to be honest.
Oh, I love the fact you've still got the mug. It's perfect.
It was awful.
That is your therapy. That's your way of coming to terms with that incident. It's just keeping the mug.
Yeah, and I've done gigs where there's been, really, really drunk stag parties. I've been at gigs where they've thrown stuff on the stage. I've been at gigs where the moment I walk out and they see I'm a woman, it's game over. They're not as bad as the Menwith Hill rally. Nothing's as bad as that.
Oh my, honestly. Thank you, Maisie, so much. It's been really, really good. It's been lovely talking to you again, actually. It's probably nearly a year since we last talked, isn't it, with the last festival? And a lot's happened. A heck of a lot has happened.
It has. Hopefully next time we'll all be within 2 meters of each other.
Yeah, yes. Let's look forward and crack on as best we can. And take care, and we can all follow your journey and wait for your big comeback tour.
Definitely. I'm meant to be at the theatre in October, and I'm hoping that's still on. So let's all keep our fingers crossed that we're there. Yes, absolutely.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for coming on. Just to say quickly before we go, we're doing the festival this year. We're doing all the events for free, but we're trying to raise £1,000 for refuge over the festival instead. So I'll send the link around on email to everybody that's signed up, and it's just if you're able and you would like to support it. We're just over 50% of the way through the festival, and we're over 50% of the way to the target, which is absolutely brilliant. So there's no obligation, but we'll share that link with you if that's all right. And thank you very much. Thanks again, Maisie, and take care.
Thanks, cheers.
And have a lovely evening, everybody. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.